So we decided, because we have so many Friends of Lefroy, we decided we'd set up just a separate little bit. So the Friends of Lefroy can come in and kind of relax and be a bit easier. Because it's amazing who you bump into if you come in here. Forget this week. This week is mayhem. I kid you not, you've seen what it's like outside, right? But normally there are visits every day, twice a day. And you'll be amazed how many Friends of Lefroy meet each other in here. I mean, those who aren't Friends of Lefroy won't know. But when you go onto the net, you have neighbours, don't you? And you can talk with your neighbours, just as you would at home. So you're going to be a Friend of Lefroy. And it's quite often, it's amazing, people do bump into each other here, who they've maybe talked to on the net or corresponded with. Never thought they'd ever meet, because they're in different parts of the world. Right, so good afternoon to you, and thank you for coming. I'll introduce myself first of all. I'm Robert Hicks, I'm the master blender for Beam. I started in the industry in 1964. Right? It used to be, years ago, I would say that I started in the industry 64, and people would say, I used to be at school then. Now people say, I wasn't born then. maybe there is one here who was born at the same time as me. But I started as a general clerk in the whisky industry, and after a couple of years, I had actually gone through all the different types. I'd gone from distilling through blending, warehousing, bottling, done marketing and everything, and had concentrated on nosing whisky, being a blender. I then transferred to another company, started as assistant blender, went through and was become master blender about 18 years ago. Maybe about 18 years ago. 3 years ago, I retired. And I retired for one day. Right? Because on the second day, the 2nd of November, Beam had approached me and said, when you retire, will you join? I says, I don't want to work 5-day week, 8 hours a day. That's 50 weeks out of the year. That's too much. I've been doing it for too long. So they said, come on as consultant. So I joined on the 2nd day. So I had 1 day's retirement. But I thoroughly enjoy this. It's part of my life. When I started, I always said that it was something I would do until I found something better to do. And 44 years later, I'm still looking for something better. Can I say I did, about 8 years ago, there was you know how when you go on holiday, right? You sit at the pool, and you always talk to the people beside you. Right? I was sitting talking to this young guy, being in his mid-30s, and he said, what did you do? And I told him. And I said, what do you do? He says, oh, I'm into computers. And I thought, oh, I'm fascinated with computers. I'm a gadget freak. I am. I said, well, what do you do? Oh, he says, no, I sit in front of a computer. I said, what do you do? And he says, well, I actually work for Penthouse. He was the guy who does all the photographs of the Penthouse magazine. And I thought, maybe that's a better job. But he said, no, he says, quite honestly, you wouldn't. He says, the amount of airbrushing he's got to do on these models is horrendous. They don't look like it in real life, he said, believe you me. Anyway, that's me, that's my history. What we're going to look at today are the 3 Fez Isle, the 3 Isle of Festival bottlings from 2006, 2007 and 2008. Now, if you look at your tasting mat in front of you, you'll actually find that there are 3 blank squares that says notes. Now, what that means is that what I'll take you through, I'll guide you through the tasting and the nosing more importantly, but I want you to pick up flavours yourself. Most people use their nose to hang their glasses on, right? They don't actually use their nose to pick up smells. And most people, if you say to them, what smell do you get in that glass? I can hand them a glass and they'll say, it smells of whiskey. Maybe with Lefroy they'll say, it's a bit burnt, isn't it? Or maybe it's that smells a disinfectant. But they actually don't think about all the different flavours. Now, in the mid-90s, Tokyo University, they started doing the examination, the testing of whiskey, back in the 70s. And by 78, they'd found about 240 flavours. In the mid-80s, they'd found 400. In the 90s, about 8 years ago, they came out saying they had over 800 different flavours in Scotch whiskey. Now, don't even think, I'm not even going to give you a tenth of that, right? you might get 100, I might give you 8. But that's the number of different flavours that are in Scotch whisky. There's an immense number. Now, I know we've got one Scotsman here. How many Scotsmen have we got here today? One. Now, the reason I'm asking, it seems silly to say that, right? But I was born here. My youth was in Scotland and eating Scottish sweets, because 90% of your memory of smells and tastes are when you're a child, up to about the age of 10. So I may come out with some silly flavours, like sugar almonds, for example, and most people have absolutely no idea what I mean. Or puff candy, right? And they are saying, well, what's puff candy? So don't worry, if what I'll do, I will try and explain the type of flavours I get, but you will have, and that's the little box, you will have to interpret them for yourself. Because it's more fun if you can pick up the flavours and put your own names to them. So let's start with the flavours. Let's pick up the first glass from 2006, the Lafroig 1994. We started doing Faisal bottlings prior to that, and each year we would bottle up one cask. This year I think we bottled up one cask again. Yes, one cask. We only managed to produce somewhere in the region of about 250 to 300 bottles. Now, that year I was here. I wasn't here last year. I was in Brazil, I think it was. But in 2006, we were actually sold out of the Isla bottling, this Faisal bottling, by the Tuesday lunchtime, which meant people who came in the afternoon couldn't buy one. Our friends of Lafroig on the net could never get one. So last year we decided we'd actually produce more. We used 3 casks, and it still doesn't matter. We sold out again. We were sold out of the allocation for the distillery by the Friday of this week. And the friends of Lafroig had a few. So this year we've decided we'd make a much larger production. Because everybody, I mean, there's a very, very tiny amount of people managed to come to the distillery. So we thought, everybody who's on the web, all our friends around the world, will want a bottle. We will try and produce enough. We've not produced 300,000 by any means. We're in the, I think we've produced about 6,000 bottles. So it is still limited, but it's much larger than we've done before.